Okay, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into one of the most, truly shocking and little-known chapters in American history. We're talking about a plot by the super-wealthy to overthrow the president and install a fascist dictator.
Yeah, you heard that right.
So, picture this. It's the depths of the Great Depression. Millions are out of work, the country is on its knees. And right then, a secret conspiracy is hatched to overthrow the U.S. government. The journalist who helped break the story, John L. Spivak, called it fantastic. And he didn't mean it was great. He meant it was so wild, so unbelievable, it was almost impossible to believe it was true.
And you know, that really is the central mystery here. This whole thing, the business plot, it's a story that was actually confirmed by a congressional committee. I'm talking names, dates, a whole detailed plan, and yet it's been pretty much scrubbed from our history books. So the big question is, how does something that huge just disappear?
All right, let's get into the details. We're in 1933. You've got some of the nation's absolute wealthiest men. We're talking financiers from the Morgan and DuPont empires, and they see FDR's New Deal as a massive threat to their fortunes. To them, it looked like a slippery slope to communism, and they were absolutely determined to stop it.
And listen, their goal here wasn't just to, lobby or influence policy. No, it was to completely replace American democracy. The plan? To set up a dictatorship basically modeled on the fascist movements that were gaining a scary amount of steam in Italy and Germany at the time. Okay, now for a plot this insane, you need more than just a pile of cash. You need a face. You need a charismatic leader. Someone the public, and this is the really important part, the military would trust and follow, no questions asked.
And the man they chose was Major General Smedley Butler. This guy was a legend. One of the most decorated Marines in U.S. history, a two-time Medal of Honor recipient, and he was just wildly popular. In their minds, he was absolutely the perfect man for the job.
On paper, he was a no-brainer. He had the total, unwavering respect of the soldiers they needed to march on Washington. His squeaky clean reputation for integrity would give this whole coup a kind of patriotic shine. They really believed he could rally 500,000 veterans to their side. He was their guy, or so they thought.
But here is where the story takes a massive turn. Their chosen leader? He was the one guy who would never betray his country. Butler was a patriot through and through, but his loyalty was to American democracy, not some secret club of rich businessmen. So instead of leading their coup, he decides to play along, with the goal of bringing the whole rotten thing down from the inside.
All right, so let's talk about the plan itself. This wasn't just some vague idea talked about in a smoky room. No. This was a specific, step-by-step strategy, and it was inspired directly by those fascist movements that were taking over in Europe.
Get this, the main organizer of the plot, a bond salesman named Gerald McGuire, actually traveled to Europe on the plotter's dime, of course, and his mission? To study the methods of Mussolini and Hitler up close and personal. He was literally taking notes on how to build a fascist movement right here in America.
And what's really fascinating about their plan is how it was all about manipulation first and then brute force later. So step one, create a brand new super powerful cabinet position for Butler, basically making him the guy in charge. Step two, use their media connections to spread fake news claiming FDR's health was failing. And that army of veterans, that was the final step, a big show of force to help push Roosevelt out of the White House.
It's kind of crazy, but the plotters really saw themselves as patriots. In their minds, what they were doing was a necessary evil. They genuinely believed that fascism was the only way to protect their wealth and their power from what they saw as Roosevelt's socialist policies and this, looming threat of communism.
So, who were the money men? Who were the powerful figures bankrolling this whole thing? Well, when General Butler finally testified before Congress, he didn't hold back. He named names, pointing directly at some of the biggest players in American industry and finance. The list of the alleged conspirators reads like a who's who of the corporate elite back then. You're talking about Robert Sterling Clark, heir to the Singer sewing machine fortune, Grayson Murphy, a director for J.P. Morgan-backed companies, and Irénée DuPont, the head of the insanely powerful DuPont family, who helped fund something called the American Liberty League, which was basically the political front for this whole operation.
And this just goes to show you how confident they were. To try and impress Butler, McGuire whips out a bank book showing over $100,000 in deposits. Now, that was a staggering amount of money during the Depression. We're talking millions in today's money. And he claimed this was just for expenses.
He even boasted that his friends could cough up plenty more dough where that came from. Just incredible. So you have General Butler, this decorated war hero, and he takes this absolutely explosive story to Congress, specifically the McCormick-Dickstein Committee, which was investigating Nazi propaganda. You'd think alarms would be going off everywhere, right? High-profile action, headlines, but the official response was, well, weirdly quiet.
Publicly, the committee basically swept it under the rug. They released this heavily redacted version of Butler's testimony, taking out all the names of the powerful men he'd pointed to. Their final public report? It just dismissed his incredibly detailed account as nothing more than hearsay.
It is honestly almost unbelievable. I mean, think about the gravity of these accusations. And yet, the investigation just seemed to deliberately avoid the most powerful men involved. Get this, Robert Sterling Clark, the guy who allegedly offered to spend half of his $60 million fortune on this coup, he was never even called to testify. Not once.
But that public cover-up wasn't the whole story. Not even close. Because while the committee was telling the American people, hey, nothing to see here, move along, its own internal, private findings were painting a very, very different and much more disturbing picture.
And this is the bombshell. In its private internal report to the House, the committee straight up said it had received evidence of an attempt to establish a fascist organization in the country. It explicitly said they were, and I'm quoting here, able to verify all the pertinent statements made by General Butler. They even confirmed McGuire's letters with his money man, Robert Sterling Clark, from when he was over in Europe studying fascist groups. So, bottom line, they knew it was real.
But by the time this explosive truth started to trickle out, it was just too late. The official story had already been set in stone, largely by the powerful men who controlled the media. You had outlets like Time magazine openly mocking the whole thing, calling the allegations a joke. And just like that, the story just evaporated. It became this weird little footnote instead of what it should have been, a massive chapter in American history.
So in the end, the plot didn't fail because it wasn't real or because they didn't have enough money. It failed because of what one writer called the inspired stupidity of the guys who planned it. They had the cash, they had the plan, they had the connections. Their one single fatal mistake: they tried to buy themselves a dictator, but they accidentally picked the one true hero who was not for sale.
So where does that leave us? I mean, the business plot is just this chilling reminder of how fragile democracy can actually be. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other stories, just as incredible, just as important, might still be out there, just hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to rediscover them?